Hello, my name is Bonnie Piper, and I am from Gilbert, Arizona.
Hi, I'm Marissa Garay, and I'm from Mexico City.
Hi, I'm Alex Lind, and I'm from Phoenix, Arizona.
Hi, I'm Dre Williams, and I'm from Tempe, Arizona.
Hi, I'm Olivia Mulergo. I'm from Kigali, Rwanda. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to share with you our experience. To start us off, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our client. So our team spent the last 2.5 weeks in Quito, Ecuador, working on a project for Heifer International. Specifically, our goal was to develop a business training curriculum that Heifer can then use to train their rural entrepreneurs.
Fantastic. So you all just recently returned and you were active participants in the 2018 Global Consulting Laboratory here at Thunderbird. Sounds like you had a fascinating experience all around. Why don't we start from the beginning and let's just track for the audience what the experience looked like and then how that ultimately informed the work that you were able to contribute to Heifer. So you get to Quito, and what do you do that first week that you're on the ground there? Bonnie, do you want to take that one?
Absolutely. 6 a.m., bright and early Monday morning, we get a call that our ride is outside our apartment, and we meet with Clara from Heifer International, who will be giving us a tour of 5 different clients of Heifer International. So we load up in a luxurious bus and spend the first day probably 10 hours driving due south in Ecuador. And the first client that we get to meet with was
Palo Santo.
Palo Santo. And we were all so excited. We asked a bunch of questions, met with them for about an hour and a half, and were able to start building our needs assessment from there on out. Day 2 came around. We met with a honey client as well as a black shell and crab client. And within those first 2 days, I think we were able to see a variety of businesses, whether they were in the beginning stages or in the advanced stages of their business. Within the next couple days, we saw an alpaca business as well as a dairy project. And so within these 5 days of driving, we would sit in our bus and meet and discuss the commonalities that we found in each business and try to develop a needs assessment for these projects.
Okay. So initially you spent the first week getting to understand who would be the target trainees for this curriculum that you would help Heifer International design. What types of things really stood out to you as you come from a sophisticated education that you're receiving at Thunderbird, and then you jump into the ground level here in Ecuador? What types of things did you notice about these businesses that really started to stand out and inform the work that you were going to be doing for these clients?
So I think one of the big things was that everyone thought a lot about their community. Like, these were community businesses. So it wasn't only like, I want to grow my business. This is something that they wanted to leave for their children, for everyone in that community. So that was a big one. They were not organized. Like, nobody was organized. So we honestly didn't really know what to expect. But I think when we got there, it was kind of a shock that this was going to have to be like a really basic. So all the information we had, we were going to have to show it to. Heifer kept saying, you have to teach little kids almost. Like, this is really basic information. So that was kind of a challenge for us. But it was seeing these people and seeing how much they really wanted to grow their businesses. That was really nice, and that helped us. That motivated us to do what we did.
Yeah. Well, and I just remember meeting that day that you returned from these field visits, and while you were certainly tired, you were also on this high, this adrenaline high of, these people are very inspirational and they're doing these really neat things, and if you could help them marry that interest with the right level of insights, then they can really have a pretty strong impact. Okay, so from there, Alex, walk us through the next step in the process.
Yeah, so when we returned back to Quito, we met our Heifer person. She went back to the United States, and so we actually met another point of contact there who was the business manager, and he just said, get going. And so we had organized over the weekend kind of what our plan of action was going to be. And so we had separated our work into 3 different sections. So a marketing section, a finance section, and a management section. And we just started tackling.
How did you come to those 3 themes?
Yeah, good question. So we were talking over the week, a lot of talk in the bus and then at the hotels at night of kind of what the commonalities were throughout. And Heifer already works a lot in terms of logistics and understanding the product. And so they really needed help with the business side. And so we figured out all of the objectives that we were trying to accomplish through the training module can be broken up into those 3 umbrella subjects. And so we figured out that through those 3 umbrella subjects that we all have specialties within them. And then we kind of just split up the work a little bit, and then we come together every night to discuss what we talked about.
Okay. So, Dre, talk to us a little bit about how you were able to tailor this deliverable so that it was useful to both a company that might be further along the progression and a company that might just be starting out or might not have much exposure to these business concepts at all.
Tying back into what Marissa said, we really wanted something that was basic, but also something that was flexible and responsive to the needs of the different businesses that Heifer has, but different businesses at different levels of growth. And I really think that speaks that speaks to our needs assessment, which we began with, because we then created a checklist that different businesses could that the training managers that Heifer has could check off for them, like if they're at, because we went through level 1 through 3. Level 1, super basic business. Level 3 is a pretty self-aware business, and they're able to get the ball rolling. So a trainer could then check off if they've completed everything in level 1, they completed everything in level 2, so that they could get the ball rolling there and become pretty self-sufficient. So we wanted something that was responsive.
Okay, so this needs assessment allows the trainers in the field to identify where a particular business is, and then based on where that particular business is, they would launch the training at that level.
Exactly.
So if they truly are at a level 1, fantastic, that's where we're going to start. If they do a great job at level 1, but they're at a level 2, then great, that's where you would start.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay. So it sounds like a lot of fantastic field work met with a lot of office work. Talk us through what that was like to in this amount of time to interact with Heifer in this really rich way and design a really robust training curriculum that really has every intention of impacting the lives of these rural entrepreneurs.
I think actually our time was divided really well. Initially, I think I was particularly concerned that we were spending so much time on the road and not enough time, sitting down and working. But then it became very clear at the end of that week that, that time we had spent was valuable. Getting to know the businesses, getting to see them and to see what they're doing and to have them in our minds, when we were developing the training. So as Alex said, by the time we came into the office on Monday morning, we knew exactly what we wanted to do, and we knew who we were doing it for. For the basic level, we were thinking of the alpaca business, for example. So whatever we were doing, would go back and check, would the alpaca people be able to do this? Would the alpaca people be able to understand this? And then for the level 3, we were thinking of the dairy business because they were fairly sophisticated in their business. So we were thinking, okay, will this be useful for the dairy people? Is this going to add value to them? So it really helped us spending that time in the field to be able to sort of like create the framework around which then we worked in the second week.
Yeah. Now, in your process, you had multiple interactions with your client, and then you had a more formal midpoint deliverable that would have then prepared you for your final report out with your client. take us through that experience of preparing for the midpoint, and then perhaps share what you learned in that midpoint that then informed what you were able to put together in your final. Alex, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so we had spent the first 3 days, I think we were very anxious of getting into the office and very excited to start working. And so we spent those first 3 days, late nights, early mornings, just working a lot. And we had produced a needs assessment and what they call a scope and sequence, which is just the skeleton of the curriculum that we created. And so we created that in the first 3 days, which we were able to present to Heifer. And one of the big things that I think that we got out of it was the complexity that we had. We needed to not only make it applicable and easy to understand at kind of a basic level, but we also needed to connect our objectives a little bit more. And so through doing that, I think that we had been told before that these were 8-hour sessions where they go all day of training, but then we figured out that they might have an hour, maybe an hour and a half of sessions. And so we try to then skew our lessons where every single lesson has something valuable to take out of it, and every single lesson is in a timely manner.
Okay. Marissa, why don't you build on that a little bit? So what would be some examples or some concrete things that you were able to infuse into these lessons that would be both relevant for the level that the business was, but also would kind of build upon one another and interact with one another so that it's a very cohesive curriculum?
So I think by the time that we did our midpoint presentation, we had maybe 1 or 2 lessons done there. So we actually showed these to the people from Heifer. And after their feedback, what we noticed is that, one, we had to kind of connect them all. So even though if a business has gone through level 1, 2 of finance, they can bring that into the levels 1, 2 of marketing or management. So for example, in marketing, we would think, okay, if we're at level 2, we know that the people already know this from finance or this from management, and we started incorporating maybe different finance templates, stuff like that. And then what we also did was, at the beginning of level 2 and 3, for example, we did a review of the previous level. So the idea is not necessarily that every business goes through levels 1, 2, and 3, as I explained with a checklist, as Trey was saying. So if a business starts at level 2, they will still get a review of level 1, so that the trainers know that they do know the concepts of level 1, even though they weren't taught by Heifer, but they give them a review so they'll all understand every single lesson. So that was part of it. We also tried to incorporate local stuff. So we talked about their specific businesses in the lessons, or the activities that we used. We used Ecuadorian products or supermarkets or stuff like that, so that it would be easier for them. And of course, we always wrote like a little note to the trainers saying, please go ahead and change whatever you think is necessary for the audience that you have.
Bonnie, Heifer was particularly pleased with the layout, the flow, the overall pedagogy. Share with the audience what that looked like, just at a high level, and then maybe walk us through or explain for us what the final deliverable that you shared with the client ended up looking like.
Sounds good. As Alex and Marissa both mentioned, we had complex content, so we had to simplify as much as possible. Thankfully, Alex and I have had some teaching under our belt in our past experience, and we were able to create a template for trainers that's very typical in education settings, with a basic outline of the objective that needs to be met, along with the expected results, and various activities in between to meet that objective. So once we had the template down, it was really easy for all of us to start filling out various definitions and information and activities, and then we consolidated that all into one very lengthy document. I think we included about 60 lesson plans, which are easy to read and easy to implement.
Alex, why don't you build on that for just a minute? You broke it down into the what, the how, the why, and then the resources. What was the thinking behind that methodology, and why do you think that Heifer found it so valuable to their charge, which is to really help move the needle for these rural entrepreneurs?
I think so. It's actually twofold. So the first reason that we did it was because when we got information from Heifer, this is how Heifer does it, and we wanted to be able to implement something that they would be used to reading. And so that was actually our first charge towards separating into the knowledge section, the abilities, and then the value section. But then as we started going, we started to understand, hey, if we separate it into these three ways, then we can actually infuse our lessons with the why. And that was some feedback that we consistently got, is that if the trainers and the trainees didn't see the value in the training, they wouldn't listen. And so by separating it into these three sections, we were able to focus on those value sections, that why section, to really kind of push, this is valuable because of what. And so every single lesson ended up emphasizing that value section. And then on the same token has that knowledge section where they're actually learning what business practices, the best business practices for them.
Yeah. And for the audience's information, this team in just under 3 weeks in collaboration with Heifer produced a very durable, very intriguing 236-page training curriculum.
In color.
Aesthetically beautiful, and even printed and bound and handed over to them. Just really, really compelling, really interesting work. I know your client was very, very happy with what you were able to produce, and certainly the sense that I get is that you very much love the process along the way. But why don't we take the last couple of minutes and just reflect on some of the experiences and some of the lessons learned along the way. And Olivia, why don't we start with you, and we'll move our way through to Bonnie. You just came back. You just completed the Global Consulting Laboratory in Ecuador. What did you learn? What did you take of value from this field experience? And then what do you hope that you contributed along the way?
Well, firstly, I think for me the biggest takeaway was just realizing how much you can accomplish when you have a good team. You know, I know when we sign up for the GCL, you always speak about congruence and, you know, collaboration and the 3 C's, but it really came together for our team. We worked really well together. I mean, some of us were friends before, some of us were not friends, but it was just amazing. There was no skill that was duplicated. So it was just, you know, being able to produce that, it really came down to how well we worked as a team. You know, no minute was wasted. Everything was just cohesive. For myself, what I'm taking away from this is, one, I love international development. So I'm excited to do things like this more and more in the future. And to be able to produce something like the curriculum we produced, I hope that 5 years from now, you know, I'll read something about it. I hope it will still be used, you know, and maybe it can be adapted elsewhere. That would be really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Dre, how about you?
Building on all of that, of course, the actual 236 bound book that we happened to leave with Heifer, super proud of that. But more importantly, I feel like something that I took away from it was the ties that bind us and the relationships that we built, but also meeting with those people in the field and hoping something that we are leaving something that, as Olivia said, is going to stand the test of time and that we can hear about in the future, that can be implemented not only in Heifer Ecuador, but possibly throughout Heifer International. And you know, we were talking about this, hopefully maybe like even in the States, like something like that on a small level. Something that I'm taking away from it, a lot, definitely a lot. But just knowing that I have a good team here and I made good connections there, and I saw my friends here.
It was interesting as we were talking yesterday. I think the comment came from this group that you knew how to work in teams before. You came away from this learning how to trust teammates. Maybe expound on that a little bit. What's the difference between getting work done in a group and genuinely trusting each other? And how do you think that influences the caliber of the output, the caliber of the work produced? Go for it.
So when we were on the bus, so I had in my undergraduate classes a lot of communication classes talking about, foreman, like groups, how there's foreman, storeman, Norman, and then performing. And so I was like, when are we going to hit all these stages? Like, what are we in now? When are we going to hit the storming? What's going to happen? And then finally, when are we going to be performing? I don't really feel like we had a storming phase at all. I feel like we almost went directly from foreman to performing. It was great. I feel like our team was really cohesive, and we really gelled and meshed well together so that we were performing right out the gate.
And I think on top of that we had separated ourselves into what we were specialized in. And I know maybe it's through pride or something, but I like to check everyone's work just as like a do you really know what you're talking about kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in Ecuador, I didn't really feel the need to at all, because the other group that was working on marketing, they really knew what they were talking about even more than what I knew in marketing. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but it was definitely like, I think that the trust was built there, that if I know that, for instance, if Dre was working on something, I know that it would be of quality, that I wouldn't have to double check, not like I'm better, but just like, it's that trust in a team that I know that if Dre works on something, it's going to be of high quality. I know that if Bonnie works on something, it's going to be high quality. Or Marissa. I'll get it.
And to expand on that, the result that had, I was able to focus and not worry about others. I was able to give my part of the project my 100% attention to make sure that it was valuable and solid. So that trust, I think, made our project that much better.
And I think one more thing is also, you always, when you're in teams, you feel like either you're doing everything or you have to push people, like, have you done it? Have you done it? And that never happened here. Like, everybody was doing their thing. Nobody had to be pushed. Nobody had to be told anything. I think the contrary. Like, people were like, oh, I already did this also.
Actually, as Marissa and Bonnie was saying, it was actually the opposite. It's almost like we were sort of pushing each other, so everyone was trying to do a little more and do a little more, and so we all ended up just like really doing a lot.
Yeah, and then I think another thing that this team did really well is not only were you doing that because you wanted to have this professional experience, but you were also doing it because you had so put on the shirt of your client and Heifer, and then seeing the impact that they can potentially have on these rural entrepreneurs. And so just really committing to the caliber of the work, because I think you genuinely believe and have a sense that the caliber, really high caliber work can have a lasting impact in this space. How about you, Alex, on the lessons learned?
Oh, wow. So kind of backing off of everything that they said, I totally agree that this was really neat to be able to work in. I think 5 people is kind of the max of a group for it to work very efficiently, and it worked very efficiently. So I think that I learned a lot in like how to actually separate work and trust the teamwork, what we were just talking about. One thing on a professional level is the importance of like localization, and how a lot of times with training modules or even with like multinational corporations, there's a lot of like push into a country like from headquarters. But for instance, Heifer has had a lot of different business modules pushed on them before from different universities, but they can't implement that because it's not localized. It's not relevant to the local businesses. And so just our week and a half work or 2.5 weeks work of creating this training module that's localized to the people is a huge platform that they can now kind of tweak little by little as time goes on. And I think that that's an incredible lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Marissa?
Well, of course, everything that they've said. But also, what I take out of this is kind of to believe that we can do this. Because when we first went there, we had really no idea of what we were going to do, if we were going to be capable of anything. And once we were there, it was like everything we've learned at Thunderbird just came together. We were able to use it like in the world outside. So that was wonderful. Like it was an amazing professional experience. And of course, friendship wise, it just came together perfectly, I feel. And I hope that it's kind of the same for them. Not that much for Heifer, although of course I do, but for the people that Heifer is gonna help. I hope that what we left there, because we left our heart and our brains out there, that it really helps these businesses, and that we hear back from them.
Absolutely. Bonnie, how about you?
Something I took away, something I gave. One thing that I took away, along with trust, we've already touched on that subject. I gained a whole lot of confidence on this trip. Digging deeper into what Marissa said, before we left for Ecuador, I was very concerned about what I would be able to contribute. Only taking a year of business classes and now meeting professionally with an international client was terrifying. However, with the encouragement and the support from my group, we were able to communicate everything that we've learned in the past and then deliver it into a curriculum. And I was able to use my past experience, which is mind-boggling to me. You wouldn't think that teaching knowledge and business knowledge would ever come hand in hand, but it most certainly did. And so the fact that I can use other aspects of my life to contribute to this project was really awesome. What I gave. I would like to think that our group gave the gift of hope to these rural entrepreneurs. I think that some of these business owners are trying to pursue their dreams in the middle of rural Ecuador, and that could feel lonely and scary at times. But not only do they have an international organization backing them up and supporting them, but they also have a group of grad students in Arizona cheering for them too. Which will hopefully make them feel a little less lonely while they're pursuing this.
Yeah. Well, I have heard back from Heifer, and they just couldn't be happier with what you were able to deliver and the way you comported yourselves. It's they're a wonderful organization. They really open themselves up to you, and as we've kind of touched on this theme of trust. You walked into that door and did nothing but add to the professionalism and the sense of just opportunity that they are hoping to impart to these rural entrepreneurs. So thank you so much for representing yourselves. Thank you for representing this institution so well, and congratulations on the job. Very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.